I'm Don Brumfield, and I'm putting together a program called Basic Home Repair to show you things you can do at home that are simple. I'm going to present as though you don't know anything. Maybe you're as smart as I am about it, but I'm going to pretend that you don't, so if there's people that are listening and need to know how to do this, it will become very clear to them and very easy to work. We're going to take about 3 or 4 phases to show a drywall repair from a damaged spot in your wall on drywall. And we'll be doing that as phase 1, and this is the introductory to that. I'm first of all going to tell you the basic tools you need and a little bit of the equipment. So to start with, you're going to need to get 1 gallon approximately of all-purpose joint compound. This can be obtained from Home Depot or Costco's or any of the hardware stores. Generally carry this compound, and it's an all-purpose. That means that it can be used for all phases that you're going to do with your taping and patching on holes. And then the other tools that you will need that I use is I have a chalk line here for snapping lines to cut out the drywall in places I need to. I have a little block plane to smooth the edge if I need to on the drywall. We have some blades here that go into, I have a packet of them. You just slide them up and slip them out to the side, and then you put them into what we call a sheetrock tool. This is a tool that is adjustable. You can slide the blade out to different depth for whatever depth you want to cut and retract it. And you can have the storage in it. I took this one apart so you can see how it works. This is where the blade sets inside here, and then this moves it forward, as we showed you on the other one, out whenever it's put together. It slides it forward. And you have a compartment here to put a few extra blades, so that if you're ever working on a job, you just open it up and change the blade out with a new one. And these are disposable. You can throw it away, but they're nice and sharp, almost razor sharp when you first buy them. This knife goes together by sliding the 2 halves like this into position, and then it's ready to put back together and use. And I had taken the screw out of this one earlier to show you the insides. It just takes a straight slot screwdriver and you put it into the screw that's in the hole and you put it together. That's how you tighten them up. Some of the newer knives, you don't have to take them apart. You just push the blade out. There's a way to push the blade forward and pull it out and put another one in and pull it back in. But I'm from the old school, and so I had these. So I have a couple of them here today to work with. You can see how they work. Then you're going to need some different size blades. Sometimes they call them knives for drywall people. But this one is a 1.5-inch blade. This is if you're into a very tight spot. You can use that to dress the mud a little bit. So it just smooths it out and you don't have a big clump to sand. This one is a 4-inch blade. This one goes to a 5-inch blade. The next one here is a 6-inch blade. And then the one that you use for your finish coat, I generally end up using either the 6-inch blade or I use the 10-inch blade to dress the drywall where you're patching. So you'll see that as we go forward with the project, how that works. Now if you have a damaged spot in your drywall, we use what we call a keyhole saw, and this keyhole saw is used to run it into the sheetrock. I'll just act like this is it. You go in the sheetrock and then you cut out the damaged part to the shape you want to patch. All right? That's the tape, however, that's not sheetrock. And then of course you have the tape that I was showing you, and you'll need a mixing pan like this. This is called a drywall all-purpose compound pan that you use. And when we start our project, we will take some of the compound from here, place it in here, and then we put a certain amount of water into it, and we use a process that we call cutting it in. I will stir the water into the mud until I get it at the consistency I want, and then we will go forward with our patch. So this kind of introduced you to some of the tools. I have one more I will show you. before I quit today, and that's this tool right here. This is called a sanding pole, and you can put it on a wall and sand up and down on the drywall with this sanding pole, and you can turn it either way. It's got a two-way swivel, so it'll go any way that you want it to go. The pad on this is a carbide pad. You can see I've used it, and some of the drywall has stuck into it, but it's carbide. And so if it gets gummed up like this and doesn't clear itself, then I can take it loose here and put a new pad on, slip it in here and tighten it up, pull it down the other end, tuck it in and tighten it up here on this end, and I have a new pad. The thing that's good about these is I could take this one and basically turn it over and use this side because it's all carbide, and as you'll see, it has little perforated holes in the edge of it. In through here, there's perforations, so that when you sand, the dust falls away from this, and that's the advantage of using that instead of using sandpaper. And sandpaper just plugs up. Here's a piece of sandpaper, and if you were sanding a spot on the drywall with this, you'll find that the grit wears out and the dust doesn't fall away, and so this is by far the better instrument to use. That's the introduction to the tools. We have introduced you to the tools. I'm going to take some scrap drywall and we will make a patch spot in it for our next session and show you how to repair a damaged piece of drywall. So that will be actually the completion of this phase 1, and then getting the patch started. And then we will show you how we have to let the compound dry, and then we will go to phase 2. We have to let that dry, and then we'll go to phase 3 for the finish coat. And that should pretty well do it for the drywall patch. Thank you very much for watching. Hope we see you soon. I wanted to let you know a little bit about the product we're working with today. It looks like this. This is a full width sheet, but they generally come 8 foot long. This is just a piece. You can see the edge is beveled here because if they put this on the wall and it's 8 foot out, they lay the other one up here, and this gives them room to put the tape and the mud on the joint. So that's how that's done. I just want you to know that. This has 3 names for this typically. They call it sheetrock, they call it drywall, and they call it gypsum board. They call it gypsum board because this white part is the gypsum that's glued between 2 layers of paper, and they call it gypsum board for that reason. They call it drywall because it is dry. It has one paintable side surface and one side that is just the matting that holds it together. And then they also call it sheetrock because it's a sheet of rock put together, this ground. So there's 3 terms. They all mean the same thing. So don't let that confuse you if you're buying it at a store. You can tell them what you want in any one of those 3 terms and they will know. All right, we're continuing on with our phase here on our patch today. And I have made, as you can see, an intentional damage spot here. And this damage then is going to be to where we can cut it out and have a 4x4 opening to put our patch. So I will proceed to do that to show you how you do it. We use a keyhole saw, is what it's called, to cut the damaged area out. And I just take and drive the point through, and then I can go up and down like this, and cut my square out. Then we'll go this way. And we'll go this other direction. Have one more line to do. And that's the end of that. Now we've got the space, the 4-inch space that we want. I just make sure that the bottom edge of this is not beveled out beyond the top edge. I want to under bevel a little so that the patch will fit in there right. So I just double check that it's like that a little bit. That's all you have to do. Okay. Then we'll dust this off. Now then, you always make the patch 2 inches each dimension bigger than the hole that is damaged. So if you put this on here, you can see there's approximately 1 inch and 1 inch and approximately 1 inch and 1 inch for this patch that goes on there. This is what we're using. Now we want to use the face paper to put this patch on here and not have to use any other substance for that. So I'm going to show you what the other option would have been. We would have had to have used this kind of tape, and then there'd been nothing to hold it up against it because we don't have a seam to run this on, you know, from both sides. So that's why that they call this just a patch. And it's something you can do with the drywall itself. We're letting this face paper 1 inch each way represent the tape that you'd put on a joint. So the way that I do this is I just turn it on the back side. I don't want to cut the face paper because that's what we want to look like the rest of the material. So I'm going to cut it on the back side and take off the back side of the paper. I'm holding it in from the corner approximately 1/8 inch, and I don't measure this. I just look at it and draw the knife. This is what I do down through the material. Okay, something like that. And then I do the same thing over here. I go in for 1/8 of an inch and draw it down through there. Then I'm going to go the other direction with it and do the same thing. So I'll lay it where I can see the crack and just look down through it and give myself a little bit of clearance for the block to fit in there. Just like so. And I'll do the same thing over here, just like so. Okay, now that that's done, what we do is we take the drywall and I snap it open, and then I take my fingers and start pressing right here against that and peel the backing off. I leave the face paper attached to my repair so that there's my face paper. I go all the way around the block doing that same thing. If you ever have drywall like I had a little piece stick on there, you don't want anything underneath the paper. Then I don't use a cutting side, I use just this edge, and you can pick it off like that. So we're doing the same thing all the way around here. We're about done. And I'll show you again on this little tiny spot here. You take the back side and you just pick it off. So now that that's a pretty good shape, then I do what I call a test pattern. I'm going to see if my plug fits. And it does. It fits in the hole okay. So now the thing we do is we mix up our compound, which is in this bucket right here. And I take this edge of it. I don't take this edge because you can bend it and then it doesn't work right. So I just take the back edge of it here and I start working this lid up off of the seam here to open it up. There, that's done. Now I told you before about the stainless steel pad and using it, and so I'm going to take a little bit of this compound in here to use for my patch. So I'm just going to reach in, take some out of the corner like that, and that will probably be sufficient. If it's a little thick and seems pretty thick, then I put some water into it. I had placed a little bit of water in this the other day when I used it, so it's pretty good condition, just kind of like it is here. So we'll see if we can't just use this today. Yeah, I think that looks like a pretty good consistency on on the mud on that. So now I'm going to come over here to the patch position. Oh, and by the way, you'll hear a good drywall person is always doing this. You hear the metal snap as I clean my blade. You always try to keep your blades pretty clean, and I just want to put some around here on the outside edge of where this patch is going to go. Making sure that it has some on the corners. There, that's pretty good. And then on the patch itself, I'm going to put a little bit of mud right into the seam corner of this, because I want it to fill between here and this patch, because that'll add strength to the work that we're doing. So I'm going to put a little bit in there, put a little bit in here, turn it a little bit, and I will clean my blade, as I was telling you, and put some in here, a little bit in there. Okay. Now then, that's pretty well covered the area for me to work that out. Now then, we're going to put it right back in the hole that we prepared. There it is. It's on the board. Now I always try to keep my hands pretty clean. I've got some extra water here to wash my tools and my hands, so I'm going to keep myself so I don't get drywall all over everything. If I get it on me, it doesn't matter. It dries. You can just crinkle it off or wash your shirt. That's one thing I like about the composition. Is that it's hot out here today. We're over 108 degrees, I think. So that way you don't have to worry about a little bit of spillage of the drywall compound of the mud. So again, I'll clean the blade. Now then, I'm going to start from out in the center and pull the mud out from underneath the 1-inch edges to lay this down on the board. Now then, once I get it down tight like that, so I got most of the compound out from underneath the flap, and it's about as close as it's going to get, then I generally put just a little bit more onto the board here. I'll keep this cleaned up a little here. All right, so now I'm going to put a little bit more on top, and I think what I will do is what I normally do. I told you about the different sized blades. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my bigger blade over here. This is a 10-inch blade, and I'm going to spread some of this compound on it. It's so hot, I'm going to dip this in water so it doesn't suck the moisture right out of the mud. Just a little bit. All right, and we're just going to kind of dress this. And I'll put any excess, it's going to go back in the pan. Now then, once I do that, I'm going to put a tiny bit more mud on it to fill this center section and have a little to sand off of this. That looks pretty good with that coat. Now what we're supposed to do is let this dry until the compound, as you can see, has a little bit of a grayish cast to it. When it's dry, it should be white like this side. And so instead of waiting for 24 hours, I went ahead and did a previous patch here. You can see on the back side I now have 2 patches. This one is wet with the compound that's on it, and this one over here came out from what we did the other day. That's so we can continue on. So now I'm going to show you what we do to put the second process of taping mud on this patch. Is we use our sanding pole, which has a carbide grit surface to it. And I'm going to just sand this area just a little bit here. You don't want to do too much because you don't want to rough up all of this face paper that I just glued down. I just want to get this so that I can put another coat of compound on it and make it work for it. So I'll go that far with it. Now that's about how I have them look when I get ready to put the finished coat on. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the finished coat on that we'll let dry, and we'll dress it off tomorrow, and it should be ready for painting. So I'm going to just, if you're working on a wall vertically, the powder and the dust would have already fallen off. So now when we've got our pan here with the mud, I'm going to use the 10-inch again, and we're going to put this second coat of compound on here for tomorrow. I have patched many holes like this. You can patch up as deep, you can go as deep as as wide or as big as a 12 by 12 patch. Now then that's pretty well covered that, and so tomorrow I might put just a little bit more on right here. When you're doing drywall, you want to make sure you don't build up too much drywall compound on it, because the more you put on there, then the more you've got to sand, and it doesn't sand off near as easy. If you put a bump on it, you've really got a problem of sanding down. So make it easy on yourselves. Now we'll let that one dry, and that'll be our finished product tomorrow, is what we'll work on there. Okay, now when you get through with putting your layers of mud on each time, then you want to be sure and clean your tools very well and clean everything else up every day. That's why my tools, as I have mentioned, I've had these for probably 30 some years, and you can see what they look like. They're still in pretty good shape. So I just take them over here to my cleaning bucket, and I get down in here, get a little water on them, and clean those surfaces. I'll do the same thing on this side. And I'll do it with the other one, with the 5-inch. And I have a little sponge here. These blades get pretty sharp at times, so as you get to working with it, you don't want to cut yourself. So sometimes I just use this little sponge to finish up cleaning them off. I may have to clean that one again in just a minute, because we're going to use it to close our lid on our drywall all-purpose compound. Now once you get it like that, it's important that you make sure that this mud is not sticking up on the lip here and making this hard to seal. And you want to also have a little bit of moisture inside your bucket of compound, because you can always dump it off. You can see I got a little tiny bit that's down in here right now of water. That's from yesterday when I put some in there. So what I do is I take my trowel or my knife, and I'm going to fill this all in flat. And I do this every time I do it. I've had these buckets sometimes for a year, and they're still good. If you were to get a little bit of discoloration of gray in it, if you hadn't used it for a while or the weather's real hot, you can just put a little bit of Clorox in it, and it'll kill that in it, and it won't hurt the compound, and you're in good shape to go. So remember that too. You don't want to lose your compound. Okay, now that we got that like that, then what I'm going to do is I take my hand and I actually run this ridge, the rim, like this, and it puts a little bit of water in on top, and it'll preserve it for us. You'll see when we finish up this film after this dries. We'll close this out. Okay, that looks good. Now when you put the lid on, you have to make sure that the lid is on tight, because otherwise it will dry out and get really hard and you generally have to throw it away. So I go around and make sure that I'm getting the lid. You can hear that pop at that point. Let's see if I can do it again. Okay, I think I got it on there pretty good. I'm going to look and see if my seam is sealed all the way around. Looks like we did a pretty good job of getting it sealed. You can see that there's not hardly any crack in there, and that's what you want, is down tight. Okay, that's ready for tomorrow. We'll finish that out, and we'll show you how to complete the project. Thanks a lot for watching today. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we hope that you're enjoying this kind of instruction, basic home repair. We want to keep it simple so that anybody can do it, and you can save yourself a lot of money. Now cleaning our pan along with the other tools that we showed you, and I'm putting the drywall compound from the pan into the container that has the all-purpose mud, and I start by knifing it out like this with my blade and getting it cleaned up. You want to have all your tools clean, all of them. Alright, that's pretty good. And I've got enough water in there now. I'm not going to have to add water to it, and I've already cleaned the lip on it, so that's in good shape. So, I just want you to know that this is important to do this, and I'm going to take this over here to the water, and we're going to proceed to clean it up. I'll use my sponge. That's the fastest way, the safest way to keep from getting cut. Slop some water up in each end and on the sides of it. Do it down here. You want to get it all off, inside and outside both. And you'll learn this the first time you don't do it, and you got to get some water and scrub this and scrape out all the hard compound. Then you say, boy, I wish I'd have done that right. It only takes one time to get you to learn to wash your equipment. And then it's always ready to go the next time too. You don't have to clean it up at the time you're demonstrating or working or whatever you're doing with it. Okay. There we are. Pan's all cleaned out. Whoops, got a little bit right here. That's it. So, again, thank you for watching. And if you like what we're doing, I think they'll eventually have a place where you can hit a button that says like or want to subscribe. So keep that on your mind. It helps us and it'll help you. Okay. We're now cleaning our pan along with the other tools that we showed you, and I'm putting the drywall compound from the pan into the container that has the all-purpose mud, and I start by knifing it out like this with my blade and getting it cleaned up. You want to have all your tools clean, all of them. Alright, that's pretty good. And I've got enough water in there now. I'm not going to have to add water to it, and I've already cleaned the lip on it, so that's in good shape. So, I just want you to know that this is important to do this, and I'm going to take this over here to the water, and we're going to proceed to clean it up. sponge. That's the fastest way, the safest way to keep from getting cut. Slop some water up in each end, and on the sides of it. Do it down here. You want to get it all off, inside and outside both. And you'll learn this the first time you don't do it, and you got to get some water and scrub this and scrape out all the hard compound. Then you say, boy, I wish I'd have done that right. It only takes one time to get you to learn to wash your equipment. And then it's always ready to go the next time too. You don't have to clean it up at the time you're demonstrating or working or whatever you're doing with it. Okay. There we are. Pan's all cleaned out. Whoops, got a little bit right here. Now once you get it like that, it's important that you make sure that this mud is not sticking up on the lip here and making this hard to seal. And you want to also have a little bit of moisture inside your bucket of compound, because you can always dump it off. You can see I got a little tiny bit that's down in here right now of water. That's from yesterday when I put some in there. So what I do is I take this, my trowel or my knife, and I'm going to fill this all in flat. And I do this every time I do it. I've had these buckets sometimes for a year, and they're still good. If you were to get a little bit of discoloration of gray in it, if you hadn't used it for a while or the weather's real hot, you can just put a little bit of Clorox in it, and it'll kill that in it, and it won't hurt the compound, and you're in good shape to go. So remember that too. You don't want to lose your compound. Okay, now that we got that like that, then what I'm going to do is I take my hand and I actually run this ridge, the rim, like this, and it puts a little bit of water in on top, and it'll preserve it for us. You'll see when we finish up this film after this dries. We'll close this out. Okay, that looks good. Now when you put the lid on, you have to make sure that the lid is on tight, because otherwise it will dry out and get really hard and you generally have to throw it away. So I go around and make sure that I'm getting the lid. You can hear that pop at that point. Let's see if I can do it again. Okay, I think I got it on there pretty good. I'm going to look and see if my seam is sealed all the way around. Looks like we did a pretty good job of getting it sealed. You can see that there's not hardly any crack in there, and that's what you want, is down tight. Okay, that's ready for tomorrow. We'll finish that out, and we'll show you how to complete the project. Thanks a lot for watching today. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we hope that you're enjoying this kind of instruction, basic home repair. We want to keep it simple so that anybody can do it, and you can save yourself a lot of money.